We're back. We just came off celebrating our 100th episode. I was excited for that. Decided to take a little break while my wife and I were actually on vacation. My wife's stepfather passed. That entire process just reminded me of the fact that we have no control over certain things on earth. I wanted to talk through just this idea of dealing with death. It's okay to grieve, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to curse God, right? I wouldn't say it's okay to curse God, but I think that's a natural reaction sometimes, right? How do you hold on to your faith when the unexpected happens? But there's no way that I can really know how strong my faith is unless my faith is tested, right? Faith is not the absence of trouble, but it's the courage to trust God through the process. All right, welcome to the new episode of the Myles High Podcast. It's good to be back. We took a break over the last couple of months, but we're back. I'm excited to be back. As always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? So, like I said, we're back. We just came off celebrating our 100th episode. I was excited for that. Decided to take a little break after. Got to spend some time with my family. We took a little vacation, traveled with my daughter. That was a great experience. My wife had a birthday. I can say your age. I can let you live. But we celebrated her birthday, so we took some time off and did that as well. But it's good to be back, man. I missed being able to share and have opportunities to present on this platform. So it's always great when I can get back to it. So for this episode today, I wanted to talk about something that everyone has either dealt with or is going to deal with at some point. So while I was on a break, and while my wife and I were actually on vacation, my wife's stepfather passed. He passed away. So he was sick for a little while, but still doing well, managing it. My wife's mother was taking really good care of him. But unfortunately, he passed over our break, and we obviously went through the process of going to the homegoing, spending some time with the family, and that entire process just reminded me of the fact that we have no control over certain things on earth. Going to the homegoing, spending some time with the family, it was actually a great experience, right? Great experience for me, because it was, I think, my wife and I Sharice and I were talking about it, and, I think this was the first time that I was able to spend with her entire family, right? At one time. Her mother we live in the Bahamas, her mother doesn't live in the Bahamas. So there are times where, certain breaks or certain holidays, even when some of the family is in town, other parts of the family may be elsewhere. But it was just great to, be able to come together and just spend a good amount of time, not with just her mom, but, with her siblings and extended family as well. But going through that process, obviously we had a bunch of conversations, we had a bunch of experiences, and one thing that I'm always reminded of is death really stirs up a lot of let's call it emotions, right? Whether it be good emotions, bad emotions, and not just with the family, right? With friends, with other relationships, business relationships, extended family, outside family. So, it was an experience that it just kind of reminded me of the normalcies of things that happen when we deal with death. And one of the things that was a highlight for me, or at least that stood out for me, was the way that Sharice's mom took the death of her husband. Obviously, she was grieving, was very distraught, and through conversations and in speaking with her and stuff, she just was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna make it. I don't know how I'm gonna go on, and that spurred a sort of a conversation between Sharice and I. And we talk about this all the time, right? Fortunately and unfortunately, right? My parents both passed at the same time. And I guess, fortunately for them, depending on how you look at it, right? I think quite often how either of them would have managed if the other was still around, right? Or if the other was the one that passed. So if my dad had passed and my mom was still alive, or vice versa, like how would the other deal with it? And, Sharice and I have this conversation quite often because, my experience has taught me to like always be prepared and to know that, one day, like either we're both not going to be here, or I'm not going to be here, or she's not going to be here. And, just being able to deal with that. And, her response most times is, we're going to go together or whatever. And I try to remind her, like, my dad used to say that all the time. Like, and I'm sure whether he meant it or was serious about it or not, I don't think it's neither here nor there, but words are powerful, right? And, I think it's great that he, said it and that's how it happened. But I tell her, like, if just know that it's a possibility if you keep saying it. So for me, I always try to lean on the side of preparedness, right? And just, continuing to have these conversations of, one day, it's a possibility that I'm not going to be here. I want you to be prepared. I want you to, mentally, emotionally, just start preparing yourself and whatnot. And for her, it's one of those conversations. She's just like, I don't talk about this right now. Like, let's just move on or whatnot. Or she's like, no, I could jump right in that casket with you, and obviously you're going through the emotions, but, just this process has just reminded me of the fact that we don't have control. And I wanted to talk through just this idea of dealing with death, right? It has an effect not only on the immediate family, but the extended family as well. How do you hold on to your faith when the unexpected happens and life changes in an instant, right? Death is a certainty. I think if there's one thing that's promised is that we are all one day going to die, and change is a constant, right? One of my favorite quotes is that the only constant in life, the only thing that is constant in life is change. Change is inevitable, and to be wise during the change process is to be prepared, right? Being prepared is wisdom when it comes to anything, right? Whether it's loss, whether it's failure, whatever those circumstances are, preparedness is key, right? Loss is one of life's most painful changes, but it's also a guaranteed experience, right? So the key is to be prepared. I think about my experience and just my the things that I've learned, even before my parents passed, and just knowing that the things that we go through in life test us, right? We all, at least for me, I'm really strong in my faith, but there's no way that I can really know how strong my faith is unless my faith is tested. And usually crisis is the thing that tests our faith. And crisis could be anything, right? It could be a natural disaster like a hurricane, a tornado that happens, and we lose our homes, our cars, we lose family members. It could be death within a family. It could be a divorce. It could be a failing business. It could be losing your job. Crises happen on a continual and consistent basis. But all of that we go through is what we can use and should use to test our faith, right? Faith is not the absence of trouble, but it's the courage to trust God through the process, right? While you're going through whatever crisis you're going through, faith is really trusting that, what is happening for a reason and happening for a purpose, right? And it's being done to strengthen your faith. And Sharice, I wanted to get your take on, just the whole experience. And, like I said, you and I have had the conversation about being prepared, and how your mom was feeling and how she felt. And just the fact that, man, it's really going to be rough on her, being married for so long and just experiencing life now without the person that was there for you on a day-to-day basis, right? And, how, like, we're a couple of weeks removed now from the home going, and, we're back home. How are you feeling?
Me, I block things out. So I'm not the best person to talk to when it comes to death itself. My aunt died, almost 15 years, and I still feeling that. So the way that I deal with stuff like that is I just block it out.
Oh, but the conversation you and I have quite often is
you can have as many conversations as you want with me, but if I'm resistant, then anything you say or do, it goes in one ear and come out the next. So
being prepared isn't a top priority for you.
No, to be honest, no, not when it comes to death. I know you should not have that stance, but who wants to think of something as morbid as someone dying, someone that you love, someone who you spend every single day with? You can prepare for your kids to go to college, you can prepare for life changes, you could prepare for losing your home, but to be absent from someone who you love and you spend so much time with, and that's a major life change. And it's easier said than done. And I know you were listening to a teaching from your dad, and he said the way he is able to show up for his members is he prepares and he puts himself in that position before it happens so he can be strong for people. And you always say this, you've already buried everyone. And I'm like, y'all are different. It's not easy it's just not easy. And I know before the passing of my stepdad, we had conversations with my mom about preparation, and it is easier said than done. That's tough. You have spent the last 20 plus years of your life with someone, and imagining them not being there is unimaginable, honestly. But preparation is key, but I'm not that grown yet. I'm not
that grown. So the teaching that Sharice is talking about, my dad did this teaching on. It's called Maximizing Your Faith. It's on the Munroe Global YouTube channel. If you haven't watched that, I would encourage everyone to go and watch that. It really puts things into perspective, especially when it comes to losing someone. At the time, we had lost a member of our church, and my dad was doing a teaching to encourage the members, right? And it was one of the greatest teaching on faith and dealing with crisis and death and stuff like that he's done, that I've heard. And it still helps me to this day. And in that teaching, my dad talks about how after he lost his mother and brother, he started to prepare himself to lose his wife, to lose his kids, to lose some of the members in the church. Because as someone who sits in a position that he sits in, it's important for him to be able to continue to hold it together when things happen. And the only way you can do that is if you start to prepare yourself. So I think it's just something that I've adopted over the years, right? Up until 2012, I said this before. The idea never crossed my mind of my parents not being here. And I was having a conversation with someone, and they asked me the question at the time. And when they asked me the question, it was sort of a shock to me. And the fact that it shocked me the way that it did, it scared me. And that's when I started to entertain the idea of, wow, there is a possibility that my parents aren't going to be here one day, and it could be sooner than later, right? And sure enough, 2 years later, that day came. So for me, I started to mentally prepare myself since 2012, right? Not expecting anything to happen, but just to be prepared. And you never know how you're going to feel or react or respond within those times of crisis. But the hope is that the preparedness that you're putting yourself through helps you through the process, right? One of the things I truly believe when it comes to faith, right, is like we believe in God for things, right? It's easy to have faith when things happen, when things go the way that we want them to go, right? But believing in God or having faith in spite of or despite of things going the way that you want them to go, that's true faith. That's the test of true faith, right? When you're in crisis, you're praying for a certain thing to happen, praying for a certain outcome, and the total opposite happens. Like, what do you do then? Do you lose your faith? Do you say, man, I'm just going to do away with with believing and moving forward? Or do you say, man, I didn't have any control. I hoped that and believed that things would work out the way I wanted it to work out, but it didn't. But I'm going to trust that, God is still in control and just trust the process of what is happening. So, it's always easy to have faith when things are going right or when things happen the way that we want them to happen. But the hard part is when things don't go the way that we want them to happen, continuing to have faith. I think of the story of Job when, Satan approached God and was like, man, your servant Job, the only reason he loves you, the only reason he serves you and does the things that he does is because you've been providing for him and making him so successful. But I guarantee if you take these things away from him, if you take everything away from him, he'll turn his back on you. And God was like, man, I know my servant, so, you can go ahead, take everything from him, but just don't harm him physically, right? Satan went, man, they killed his daughters, killed all his kids. His wife left him, his friends mocked him. He got sick, he lost everything, lost his home, his cattle, he lost his wealth. And through it all, he believed in God, like trusted God. And, he, at some point in the passage, he was like, man, he was talking to his friends, and his friends were saying, man, why are you still so faithful? Why are you still trusting God? And all of this is happening to you. And his response was, man, do you think I trust God and love God and believe in God for things, right? Or for something? Like, I do it because it's who I am. It's what I choose to do. It's what I believe in. I don't do it in expectation of anything. I do it because it's the way that I live. It's the way that I want to, believe and continue to believe in spite of. And that's the faith that we're supposed to have, right? And at the end of that story, God blessed Job 7 times more than what he had prior to, right? So, sometimes God puts us through tests, puts us through crisis so that we can be a testimony to someone else, right? Because, the Bible is over 2,000 years old, and we still talk about the story of Job today. And it's still made to continue to teach us of how faith is supposed to work and how we are supposed to work our faith into our lives, right? In times of loss, and faith must be rooted in God's promises to us, not in the circumstance that we're going through, right? And you when you go through crisis, those are the times where you start to quote the promises that God has given us, and you quote them back to him. And through that process, like, he'll continue to, comfort you and give you peace through the process. But you don't allow the circumstances to dictate, how you respond to it, or to even cause you to lose faith in the situation or in the process that you're going through. Don't ignore the reality that we don't have control over things, right? The key is to prepare for those things that we don't have control over. That's one of the things, like I said, that I did after I lost my parents. Man, I just truly understood and realized that there's a lot of things that we don't have control over. And on top of that, when we lose loved ones, everything that they had or possessed, they leave all of that behind, right? They take nothing with them. So the focus should be on enjoying the moments, the physical moments that we have with these individuals, continuing to appreciate the fact that they're still here, that we still have life, and not taking it for granted. Because a lot of the times, and I was doing this a lot, I just took for granted that, man, my dad and my mom, there's no way that they're not going to be around, right? I'm going to grow old with them, right? And they're going to die of old age, probably in like their 90s, or maybe even make it to 100. No, that's the perspective that I had until I, really started to come to the realization of, man, that's not promised, right? And I started to prepare mentally. So it's okay to grieve, but don't let your grief disconnect you from your faith. And that's my encouragement to you guys out there, right? It's what I encourage Sharice's mom with. It's what I encourage Sharice with constantly, and it's what I want to encourage you with as well. Don't it's okay to grieve, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to curse God, right? I wouldn't say it's okay to curse God, but I think that's a natural reaction sometimes, right? When things happen that we don't expect. I did it when my parents passed. It was just one of those emotions that I had to go through. I was pissed. But I didn't allow that to disconnect me from my faith and from trusting the process. So that's what I want to encourage you guys with throughout the rest of this year. There are going to be things that happen that are beyond your control. The first thing I want you to do is to prepare for it, expect it, right? Try to go through the process of whatever those possibilities are, and just try to work yourself emotionally and mentally and spiritually, right, through the process, holding on to your faith, standing firm on the fact that through it all, God is there, right, and He is the one that is going to take us through. So that's my continued encouragement. All of those persons who have suffered a loss recently, or who will experience loss before the end of this year, I trust that this word is an encouragement to you through these times of crisis. Well, that brings me to the portion of the part I want to leave with you, a milestone. And the milestone for today is this: faith does not erase pain. It gives purpose and transform your pain into a testimony. All right? So I want you to hold on to that word. Know that whatever it is that you're going through, it's a part of your testimony. It's for you. It's being done to you for you to make it through, for you to encourage others to do the same. So I wanted to leave that with you, just to encourage you through any process of crisis that you may be experiencing. All right. That brings us to the end of this episode. Like I said, it's great to be back. Really wanted to come back on an encouraging note. I'm really glad we're able to use this particular episode as a point of encouragement. I want you to continue to just be prepared. Prepare yourself for the unexpected, all right, so that you're not too shocked or too surprised when things happen. All right, as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, until next time, you guys stay blessed.